Here's a quick recap for any newcomers. I had a 1988 BMW convertible that ran great, so I bought a 1990 coupe shell and swapped everything from the convertible into the shell so I could go racing. I took it to autocross, but still not complete or ready for a track. So like any sane person, I bought another project car and we're gonna pull the motor and the transmission out of this one just because the starter doesn't work. And also because it is an automatic transmission and I would rather play with a stick shift while I'm driving. So today what we're gonna do is we're gonna pull the motor and the transmission out of the car and get it swapped over to a manual transmission and put a brand new starter on it. See how this goes. All right, so let's get the hood taken off the car first. And that'll give us a lot more room to work and make just life easier overall. Get that up into a safe place out of the way. And then next, so we don't get a ton of dirt in our face as we're underneath the car working, we're gonna vacuum it out quick.
Well, can you tell me, do you sleep at night? It doesn't look like everything's alright.
Now it's a squeaky clean, we're gonna disconnect all the coolant lines. And then since it is an automatic transmission car, it does have cooler lines that go from the transmission to the radiator, so we also have to get those disconnected. Wasn't too bad, and we'll probably use the nuts from these in the future to make a plug to block those off so we don't have to buy a whole new radiator. Now we got the radiator pulled in out of the way, we're gonna get underneath. Next what we're gonna do is we're gonna get in there, we're gonna disconnect the AC compressor and just hang that off to the side so we don't have to worry about that while we're pulling the motor out of the car. As you can see here, this is why the car wouldn't start, because it had a huge chunk missing out of the starter casing. All right, so next we're going to disconnect the exhaust and the drive shaft, so we're going to get underneath and get this heat shield out of the way. I guess there were mice living in it for a couple of years because there was a bunch of little pine cones shoved up on top of the heat shield. It'd be kind of hard to get them unless the car was stored upside down. Next what we're going to do is we're going to start disconnecting wiring, so we got to disconnect this junction box. We're going to
just got to gently coax it out.
a computer.
This is the beat loop plug.
So now it's time to pull the engine out, so we're going to get our find out what you forgot to disconnect tool, and we'll get it hooked up to the top of the motor. Started jacking it up, and we got this nice little leveling thing here. We had it on backwards, so it didn't help us out a ton, but it helped out a little bit. And with a bunch of wiggling, finagling, disconnecting some things we forgot to disconnect earlier, we eventually did get the motor up and out of the car. And this is the way you're supposed to get the motor out of the car, not like the way I tried it in my other video of pulling the motor out of the BMW. It's a lot easier to pull the motor and the transmission attached out to the top of the car, and you can even lower the car down even more once you have everything disconnected. It makes life even easier. All right, so it took some wiggling and finagling, but we eventually did get the motor and transmission out of the car. It wasn't really that bad. It took a couple of hours, so it wasn't too bad.
So this is the engine that is going into this car. This car. It's out of the four-door BMW that we had in here. It's unfortunately attached to an auto magical transmission. It also needs a new oil pan, which is, I don't know, somewhere up in all of that. Newer motor mounts in the car. We'll decide which ones are better. Or we're gonna kind of slap it in, see if we can get this to drive pretty quick. But we'll see. But we have a spare transmission also sitting over somewhere. And let's pull it apart.
And now that the motor's out of the car and on the ground, we can start disconnecting everything. We're gonna start with all the bell housing bolts, loosening those up, and then we'll also get the starter off the car. And then since this was an automatic transmission, it did have a torque converter and a flex plate, so we have to get both of those removed so that we can get a flywheel and a clutch pressure plate installed. All right, so here's the flywheel and the clutch pressure plate next to the flex plate that's coming off. So as you can see, the flywheel is much beefier for the manual transmission. All right, next we're going to carefully remove the broken oil pan.
Carefully lower it.
And we've got our old oil pan, which could use a very, very good cleaning. We want to make sure we get all those metal shavings out and most of the old oil. Next what we're going to do is we're going to kind of shave off all the old gasket material from the bottom of the motor. So that way we have a nice clean mating surface when we go to put a new oil pan on. And we're going to put some good gasket maker on there, just a nice thin layer, and then we'll get our actual gasket in there and make sure we get all the holes lined up. And the gasket maker actually kind of helps because you can kind of stick it in place so it's not sliding around on you when you're trying to put the oil pan on. And then next we got our squeaky clean oil pan. We're going to pop that on real quick. Nice and careful, make sure the holes are all lined up. And once we get the holes lined up with the oil pan, we're gonna start hand tightening in some of the bolts, and then we'll go just to hold it in place, and then we'll go around the whole oil pan, hand tightening them first, and we'll go around again with a wrench, tighten them down, and then eventually we'll go around again with a torque wrench just to make sure they're all nice to spin. All right, next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna take our manual transmission that's probably been sitting on the shelf for 3 or 4 years, and we're gonna clean out all this gunk, and we're also gonna replace the throwout bearing for this. We're gonna get our cleaned up parts installed and throw the throwout bearing back in. And we're also gonna put a new clutch slave cylinder on here. That was a nice easy install with the transmission out of the car. Next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna install the flywheel into the back of the motor. We had it resurfaced at a local machine shop, so that way we know it's nice and smooth and then there's no burn marks or imperfections. First, I'm gonna go around and hand tighten all the bolts, and I'm gonna use the impact gently to set the bolts, and then we're eventually gonna torque them all down. And we're gonna lightly tap the pilot bearing in there as well. Make sure it's nice and flush. Update, I actually found that my impact 12mm is a little bit draggy, so this might actually work without any tape. So we're gonna try that out, see how that works. All right, and then in addition to that, I found another socket that I had that the wider side fits nicely into the pilot bearing. So what we're gonna do is, that's our clutch alignment tool. I already had it, so don't have to use the one I already had. And then here I got it all kind of set up, and there's like a little bit of possible play, but not a ton. So we'll see if it works better than using that. We're gonna snap it into the alignment pins first, and then we're gonna kind of hand tighten a couple bolts in just to hold it in place. And then we're gonna double check and make sure that our clutch is aligned, and then we'll torque down all those bolts on the outside. Next what we're gonna do is we're gonna get that transmission on there. And what I do is I have a couple of punches that will fit, and those will kind of help me align the transmission, make sure it's rotated in exactly the right way, and then I'm not kind of coming in at a crooked angle. And it slid right on there. So now we're going to kind of put a couple of bolts into the transmission, just hand tight, just loosely, just to hold it in place until I can get a wrench on it. All right, now we'll get everything tightened down, just to hold transmission in place. Transmission install is done, but now what we need to do is we still need to install our brand new starter.
What did you think was gonna happen? You put your faith in me, yeah, you fucked up. I'm always one to put you down, and I'm never there to help you back up. It's alright, it's just life. It always goes this way because I've always got too much to say and not enough time to say it. So we can formulate a way to try and make it through the day. But I don't think it's.
All right, as you can see, we got a nice new starter on it, replaced that broken one. So hopefully it'll start up, but we'll have to get it into a car first before we do that. So we'll probably end up doing that in the next video. Thanks for watching, and we'll see how it all goes.